Hey everyone, welcome back to Aquatic Ascent. My name's Chris, your guide to taking your fish keeping to the next level. Today's topic, whether you are a seasoned aquarist or setting up your very first tank, is extremely crucial to understand, and that's the whole concept of the nitrogen cycle. Today, we're going to be breaking down the nitrogen cycle so you're able to cycle a tank like a pro. When you're keeping fish, there are a million different fish to keep and a ton of different ways to keep them. Whether you're doing fully planted tanks like these, or bare bottom breeding tanks, or you want to focus on monster fish or just the nano tiny species, every single way you want to keep fish or invertebrates, you need to learn this crucial skill, which many people online refer to as cycling a tank, or as we're going to come to learn it, the nitrogen cycle. What is the nitrogen cycle? The nitrogen cycle is basically a microscopic, teeny tiny ecosystem within your tank. It's consisting of microorganisms and bacteria that are turning harmful matter such as ammonia and nitrite into something that can be broken down or taken out through water changes much easier. The nitrogen cycle is nature's way of breaking down waste in your aquarium. It all starts from whether your fish are pooping or there is uneaten food decomposing, plant matter falling off and decaying in your tank. These are all things that are going to build up, decay, and produce ammonia. Ammonia can be extremely toxic to your fish, especially if it gets to very high levels. There are a few signs that your tank might have some ammonia buildup in it, whether your fish are acting all stressed out or you have a lot of tiny little bubbles at the surface of your water, but the bubbles can be a sign of plenty of other things. The best way to tell if your tank has an ammonia issue or something else is out of whack is with a liquid test kit. That's where this bad boy comes in handy. This is a liquid test kit by API. It's the freshwater test kit. I'm not sponsored by them. This is just the test kit I use to get the most accurate results possible in my aquarium. There are also testing strips. I personally use the ones from Aquarium Co-op to do just a quick test on my water when I'm going through a lot of my tanks after a water change, just to make sure that pH hasn't shifted too much or my TDS didn't rise like crazy, just to kind of get a quick glimpse. But if you want the most accurate information possible on your tank, you're going to want to pick up one of these bad boys, and it's not going to cut you back too much. It'll run you like $40, but having that on your own is enough to save a tank like this, which has hundreds of dollars worth of plants and fish in it, from crashing and dying and either having you leave the hobby altogether or just having to go spend all that money again to restock your tank off a little mistake. So this helps you catch things real early and will help you do a really good job of keeping your water safe. Using one of these liquid test kits doesn't have to be super overwhelming. You don't need to be a scientist to understand how they work. All you have to do is take one of these glass vials, fill it with water up to the fill line, and drop the correct amount of droplets in there. So we're going to go pick a tank and we're going to do a quick test on it so we can show you guys how it works. Now, while we wait for those to cool down, let's talk about how you're actually going through and reading these. When you look at this here, this is how you're getting your readings. Your test tubes are going to line up to these different colors, and that's going to be your reading for how much of whatever substance is in your water in parts per million. So ammonia, you can see right here, if it's nice and yellow, it's at 0. We don't really have an issue. If it's 0.25, yeah, you've got some ammonia. You shouldn't really have much of a worry. But if you start getting up to here, the 0.5 or the 1 range, you're going to want to do a water change in these green areas. So a green bottle on ammonia is not a great sign. You're going to want to pull out some water, just do a fresh water change. It might indicate that either you pulled something out or you've been adding too much food for your system to handle. That ammonia would then break down into nitrite. That nitrite you're going to see here, at 0, you'll have nice 0 ppm. A blue or purpley, if you start getting up, and once you start getting to this range, again, the 0.5, the 1, you really want to do a water change if you see that, and it might show that something's off in your tank, or maybe you had a bacteria die off. Finally, you have your nitrate. This is what plants will pull out of your water. You're going to want to see like a 0.5 to show that your aquarium's really, really cycled. If you're at 0 with everything, that's great. It means your plants are really utilizing everything and you've got a good bacteria load. So now that these are kind of finished, we take a look here. I've got a nice yellow ammonia bottle. This tank's been established for 8 or 9 months now, so that's pretty much expected. I don't really have to worry about ammonia. Nitrate, also at 0. Great, I can see my tank's healthy. And here we see that it's yellow, a little orange, which shows some nitrates, which means that the beneficial bacteria are breaking the ammonia into nitrite, and the nitrite into nitrate. Excellent. Now let's get into how to actually cycle a tank. Let's say, hypothetically, I just set this tank up. You know, I don't have fish in it yet, and it's just sitting there with water and some plants. How do I go about cycling this thing? It's a 4-step, really simple process. Step 1, you want to add a ammonia source. So if I come down here, I have some perfect options right here. You can grab a little bit of your food, sprinkle that in. Most people call this ghost feeding, and that's going to provide an ammonia source. Remember from earlier in the video, we talked about food breaking down, producing ammonia. Great. Now we've got ammonia in the tank. Some people use household ammonia. Personally, I don't really like doing that, especially if I have a ton of fish food on hand. Just sprinkle some in and boom, off to the races. Step 2, on our aquarium test kit, we're gonna start testing. And when we were coming down here, when we add food, we should see our ammonia start to go up. We should start testing and seeing this green. Because we don't have any fish in here, unlike the guys that are in here right now, because hypothetically there's no fish in this tank, you don't need to do any water changes. The ammonia is going to get real high. That's fine. It's not endangering anything. Slowly, beneficial bacteria colonies are going to grow and colonize on all different sorts of solids in your tank. A common misconception is that these beneficial bacteria colonies grow in the water column. That's just not the case. So all this sand, all these rocks, the driftwood, the plants, the sponge filters, all of that will colonize beneficial bacteria that will bring your ammonia to nitrite. I always mix up the trite and trait. Ammonia to nitrite. So once you start seeing your nitrite levels rising, you know step 2 is done. Step 3, you're waiting for your nitrates to go up. So your ammonia should have gone down because that bacteria is now cultured and turning your ammonia into nitrite. Now you should see that nitrite start to go down as you're testing, and your nitrate will start to go up a little bit. Now, there's only one step left. You've monitored everything. Now you've got your beneficial bacteria. You've been testing each day or every 2 days. Just keep a quick log. Now, all you have to do like a 20 to 50% water change to pull some of that nitrate out of the water, and you should be good to add your fish. You'll have some fresh water in for them. They're going to be happy. And as they poop and as they produce stress or a load on the system through their waste and through eating and food scraps, then now your beneficial bacteria have your cycle completed. You've created a healthy, sustained ecosystem for your fish, and your fin friends will thank you for giving them clean water and a suitable environment. You have an ecosystem in your glass box now. That covers fishless cycling. That's the easiest, safest, most beginner-friendly way to take care of a fish tank. But let's say you really need to do a fish in cycle. Sometimes this happens. Sometimes you either have a fish that is now sick and stressed and you need to create a hospital tank. It doesn't mean you have to go out and get a glass one. You can use a plastic bin for this. But as we learned, every single part of fish keeping, cycling is important. So what you need to do is still go along the cycling process. You're going to be able to put your fish in a tub, and it's going to be there. You're going to want to monitor it. You feed it lightly. You don't want to be putting too much load into the system, and you let your filters run. Just monitor very closely, keep a really close eye on it, and you're basically going from steps 1 through 4 again, and you're going to have an aquarium that is cycled with your fish in it. I want to give you some tips for success, especially if you're a new fish keeper, or maybe you're setting up your second tank. One great tip is to use a bacterial supplement. There's plenty of these out there on the market. Most companies make one. Personally, I think the only ones that really work are the refrigerated ones because it keeps those bacteria colonies alive. I am not a fan of using these myself. I usually just use a food source and go that route, but to each his own. These can be a really helpful product, and I feel like I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't mention them. The second is to seed your tank with media from an existing tank. So if we look at this tank behind me, I've got a sponge filter there and a sponge filter here. If I wanted to set up a new tank right below it, let's pretend these doors weren't here and it was a 2-layered, I'm like, cool, brand new tank time. I can just take one of these sponge filters, pop it in, and for the most part, that tank is pretty much already cycled because there's all that bacteria and microorganisms in that sponge filter that I'd be able to add a pretty light load to it to start with. Obviously, you're not going to want to stock it to the max. Let's say it's a tank that'll hold 50 fish. You probably want to put about 25 fish in there to start, just because you want the glass to start culturing the bacteria, your substrate, all that to kind of grow. But adding that media is a huge, huge advantage. Let's say I only had one of these filters and I just bought a new tank and a new filter. I take my used filter, stick it in my new tank, squeeze all the gunk out, and that's going to make your tank look a little bit messy, but that's the microbiome that we're talking about. That now has your tank seeded, it has your fish and your cycle basically ready to go. So that's a really, really good way to seed your tank. Other than some people saying, oh, I just dumped old aquarium water, because the aquarium water doesn't have the bacteria, but the small particulates in your filter and the gunk does. Let me know in the comments if you have any other tips for people that can help someone out. You never know, the goal is to create a community to help each other. Remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to water parameters. I'm going to be making a much more in-depth video on this in the future. Do your research on the fish you're getting, always important. If this video helped you, please hit the like button down below, drop a comment, subscribe. It helps me keep content like this coming, and it also helps our hobby get a lot more exposure, which is a main goal of this channel. With that being said, I wish you the best of luck on your first or 50th tank. Have a good one, everyone. See you in the next video.